Pastor, greetings. I wanted to do a quick training here about this template, and I wanted to start with a quick training on this concept of seeker-sensitive sermon. Preaching, teaching. Uh, you can do the same thing applies midweek. You just can get more down and dirty with practical strategies. You can have discussion, you can have handouts, that kind of thing in a midweek. So, but the same concept applies. And here it is. People don't, you know, the people who are going to come on Sundays regularly to get a good word from their pastor are going to come. You don't have to tell them and almost persuade them to come. It's going to be good this Sunday. They know it's going to be good. And so they're coming in this world we're living in now, when we're trying to reach out, especially on social media, through social media, we have got to let them know immediately, people, that there's something here that you need, that you want, in fact. They're not just coming to hear a word, otherwise they'd be going to somebody's church. So, but what they are looking for, as we teach, right, as I teach all the time, is to get their needs met, right, to get their problems solved, to get their questions answered, get help for the things that are painful in their lives. So, seeker sensitive. We're focused on that. You could even call it seeker focused. Okay, and I do this, credit where credit is due, from a book called 4 Pages of the Sermon years ago. I expanded it to 6 pages based on my in-depth training on what really changes lives, what people really need. And so I just wanted to highlight it. I'm going to do more training on this elsewhere. But let me just explain it a little bit here, just so you understand what I've done with this template. And then, do you, as I say, right? There's no one way, but I think hitting all these points is really good. So the first 2 pages, if you will, are focused on the problem, right? The problem you are having that I will help you solve today, or words to that effect, right? The transformation you want, the new kind of life, etc. So they've got to know right away. And I try to do that in the posts, right, in the ads, that with social media, all the text, etc. But then all the sermon title's got to do it, and then the sermon itself, those first few minutes, because if people are scrolling, they might stop, and we want to grab them, right? And whether it's preaching and teaching. And this is what will grab them, something that speaks to their needs. And so the first 2 pages, you really dive deep into the problems with the goal to, there's several goals, and I'll go into this more in the fuller training, but one goal is to let them know you got it, right? You get it. You get them. You know what they're living. You understand their life. You walked in their shoes. You can even tell a story of, similar problem in your own life. Like, I've been there, done that. I experienced it, and God did too, because here it is right in the text. Okay, so they can relate to us. I use stories mainly in preaching, frankly, especially for seeker, trying to reach beyond sort of church folk, because stories are powerful and people can relate to them, and I can tell it in a way that doesn't sound too churchy, right? I never use King James, for instance, and that kind of thing. But you don't have to use stories, but you have to highlight what's the problem being dealt with in the text and in our lives. So you can start, with either. Today, I used to start, with church folk, more with the biblical text, but today, I would start with the problem in our lives, because that's what people are focused on, and they don't really care what's in the Bible until they know this is relevant to them. So I would actually start here, and really highlight that. You'll see how I do it with Rise, this Rise suggestion. Right. And then the next 2 pages are what God did. And this was a great insight, key insight for me reading that book, because he says, for New Testament preaching, it's about what God did in Christ or through Christ, right? First. And then that's what enables us. Because he lives, I can face tomorrow, and we've got to say why, how, what is that difference? But it's because he got up. It's because, he loves us, we can love him, etc. So God makes decisive moves that then shift everything, right? And that's the good news, right? And so we tell the good news, because what so often happens is we tell people what to do. We go right from here's the problems, here's what you're doing wrong, now here's what you got to do, right? And what that author said, and he's so right, that's law. That's preaching law. If we're going to preach gospel, we got to show them God is already taking care of this. God has made a decisive intervention into your life, into our world, and therefore it can be in your life. And here's how. So the focus becomes on God first, and then that's what enables them to now start doing different so they can get different, right? And so that's the last 2 pages, the sermon, the great results, in the text in our lives, um, based on what a guy did in the text and what God is doing or will do in your life. All right, so that's the structure you're going to see in this template. You can move things around. Really, I'm just giving you the templates, not so much the content. I'm putting content in there so you can see how I would use it. And I am making a little push, honestly, for this kind of problem-based or seeker-focused sermon and teaching structure because it's really, really powerful. I could, when I do the forward training, I'll cite more, but it's really, really powerful because it gets an emotional shift in people. They're ready for an answer. When you're done with problem focus, they ought to feel it. They might all be in tears, and I've had that happen many times. Where you've really walked into their pain because God has. And now they're ready to hear what is the answer? And the answer, and then we point them to God.